Evening, everyone. Welcome back to Along Come Norwich for what I'm hoping is going to be a nice and quick review. Now, Norwich City have won 2-1 away from home in a performance that realistically wasn't the worst. And as I said, they've won. So I kind of have to watch my tone and what I say in regards to this game because, you've got the usual nonsense of this is a results based business. But during that game, my frustration was at, like always, at peak height for Norwich City, and I found myself at halftime whinging and whining. Yet we've walked away with 3 points. It's not the first time this has happened this season. I'm very sure it won't be the last. For those watching live, I want to say just get your thoughts in the comments. More than keen to know what everyone thinks about that game. There's no George with me tonight, but I don't know. It's such a tough one with Norwich at the moment. Let's talk about the qualities. Let's talk about the good things. In terms of what David Wagner aimed to do this evening, I think he executed it. I think it was borderline effective with what he would have wanted. Norwich City were very clearly structured to counter attack on the ball when they had it, which was quite sparse in terms of when they actually had the ball. And the idea, I guess, was to sit back, maybe let some crosses in because of Norwich's slightly, physical superiority is how I'll choose to describe it. But I don't know. It's such a weird mixed feeling that we keep having this season. I don't know. I kind of want to sit here and say tonight it's not embarrassing to be sat wearing a Norwich shirt, but I'm still sat there thinking, and I tweeted this. Norwich City shouldn't be going to games and setting up in this division, and no disrespect to Hull, but Norwich City shouldn't be going to games and setting themselves up to sit back and absorb pressure and try and hit a team on the counter attack. That's the bit that frustrates me the most. But I said 2 minutes ago, let's try and talk about some positives. That lineup for me, David Wagner, his strongest 11. What is Norwich's strongest 11? I think that's a pretty close example of that. And for me, that did up the pressure that little bit more in terms of throughout the season. There's been injuries. Well, injuries is the main one, really. There's been disturbances to the squad. But tonight, that 11, just thinking about it now, I really can't think of too many improvements. Depending on how you view Kenny McLean as a centre-back, I really do think he's one of our better options, which, again, we've had the whole discussion on how it's an indictment on the quality that exists within the squad. But in terms of what David Wagner set out for Norwich City to do, it was to, as I said, sit back, absorb the pressure, hit Hull on the counter attack, and how can we not immediately talk about, in terms of counter attacks, the quality of John Rowe for that goal? Because you pick out moments in football and you remember moments in football, and that game's not going to be one we remember for the longest time. But John Rowe, again, really sort of shouldering that responsibility to just say, stuff it, I'll go for it myself. And again, I smile, but it's difficult because it brings me on to that theme of not being so positive. That quality that John Rowe has, and you can apply the same logic to Borja Sainz, who's done similarly in games where he's just sort of gone for it, whether it's a screamer or a well-taken goal. It was a fantastic goal, and he's a great player. And offensively, I think Norwich do have bags of ability, but I almost feel sorry for them at times because beyond that, he didn't really have much to do. There is the argument he didn't really do much, but he didn't really have much to do. And as Norwich were playing that game, I thought everyone just looks so rigid and in position. And I don't know. It's so difficult because that is clearly what David Wagner wanted. Hull, I thought they were all right. They're clearly they've got a style that is in progress. Not like the Hull we've seen before. I wasn't actually at the Carrow Road fixture at the beginning of the season, so I wasn't too familiar with what their style really is. But it's clearly possession, and the way they bypassed the Norwich City midfield was much like any other teams who have really played against us. And yeah, they did it with such ease. And at half time, it did have that vibe of Norwich City don't really have much to offer despite being a goal up, I know. But it just felt like, well, if Hull can get out of second gear, then we're in trouble. Yet in games, Norwich City find themselves just continuing to exceed expectation. Technically, I guess this is what this is. This is an exceeding of our expectations. But before we move on, let's have a little look to the comments. Finn says, "I sit near you in the Regency stand." Very sorry to hear that. I have got a massive head, so it is probably in the way sometimes. Angus Gunn from the Unthanked Kitchen. I had a lovely breakfast at the Unthanked Kitchen not long ago. Absolutely wonderful, superb, much like Angus Gunn. He was, again, I think his performance tonight, and he didn't make relentless amounts of quality saves, but it highlights how lucky we are to have him in goal, on the ball. I think technically very, very good, but also just as a goalkeeper, as a shot stopper, also very good. As there always is with footballers, but especially goalkeepers, there are elements of weakness to this game, to their game. To his, I think it's perhaps leadership, but those saves tonight, there was a couple of really good ones. I think it was Slater who took that one where it was the overarm. Just a sensible decision to go with that arm. I'm not a goalkeeper coach. So yeah, I probably sounded a bit stupid, but that was a really good save. The Billy Sharp one was also a good save. What I don't know what cheeses me off, and you hear it all the time, and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably guilty of it myself, but the way I perceive it is slightly different. This classic idea of, oh well, the goalie should save it, and you know when Gunny made that save from Billy Sharp so close, when the ball was so close to sort of his body, and the co-commentator says, well, he should save it. It's like, yeah, okay, but it's still a good save. It's almost like you're downplaying the quality of the goalkeeping because it's good positioning, and it's just a good stop. And there was 3 or 4 of those in the game, and I'm sure Hull would have been incredibly frustrated. Liam Rosigne, well, he always seems quite angry, but yeah, if I was a Hull fan, I would be not be in the best of moods. George says, I'm going to go and play 5-a-side when we play on Sunday afternoons. Yeah, that's what George is up to tonight, a bit of 5-a-side. Lewis says, thought we were poor again overall, but a few good performances such as Duffy, Anel, Gunn, and a moment of quality from John Rowe. Happy we won, but it gives Wagner more time, which is annoying. I absolutely agree with all of that. Performance-wise, I thought Ashley Barnes deserves a lot of credit tonight because I'm more than willing normally to criticise, but I thought he was really good tonight. And Hernandez, again, another player in recent, I say weeks, months even, where it's been very heavy on the criticism. It's been very heavy on the idea that he really does lack quality. And he's at an age now where he isn't really going to grow at the club. But tonight he came on and put under fantastic shift. He would have done exactly what David Wagner will have wanted him to do. And if he can go and do it for the rest of the season, great. That's a decent option off the bench. But goodness me, we're clutching at straws here, aren't we? Gunny, as we said, Duffy was the epitome of a championship centre-back, like a good championship centre-back, in that defensively solid, on the ball. And I know that pitch was absolutely horrendous, and then for whatever reason that may be, they share a ground with the rugby team, don't they? You know, the passing was atrocious. Ben Stokes has put up the naughty word nudge, which I would share, but, you know, in case there are, you know, kiddies watching. And thank Kitchen again. 35% possession, 4 yellow cards. Very different Norwich to what we're used to. Yeah, and for me, I have this internal debate. I'm going to leave this comment up, actually. I have this internal debate of you've got Norwich City and this reputation that they have created for themselves over the past few years in the Championship as being a team who, and this is no different to perhaps in the past, but a team who dominate. Stylistically, it's a team who control possession, who have high-flying fullbacks, who have that one player, the Buendia, the John Rowe this season, who will have that moment of magic, and the very clinical striker. That's sort of the Norwich City we know. None of them have really been defensively solid, but you don't tend to notice defensive errors as much when you just have the ball 24/7. So you have that Norwich City, and then you have the Norwich City we have now, which obviously nowhere near as effective in terms of grinding those results out, but it can win football matches. And at times, I think there probably is as much quality in terms of the players as, and maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get my point. There is a lot of quality in this Norwich City that we have, and it seems to grind out results in a very different way and of a much lesser frequency. So yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It is very different to the Norwich City that we are used to. Steve says happy with the win, but my God, the overall performance, their goal sums up the season. Yeah, I completely agree with that. In terms of the goal itself, was just not great defending. And what was bizarre for me was the fact that when that second goal went in, I'm not going to lie to you, I wasn't particularly on the edge of my seat when we were defending that 1-0 lead. I was kind of sat there thinking it's probably going to come at some point, and I don't really mind that much. But when we went 2-0 up, the game then seemed to shift, and Hull then seemed to decide to go for it a bit more. Which, if I'm Liam Rosenior, I'd be frustrated at. Why does it take 2 goals for you to go for it properly against a very defensively fragile team? And that actually links me nicely to a quick sort of side point, which is the fact that David Wagner went for the defend, absorb, and counter attack. I don't think it's a particularly sustainable method. One, because I don't think if you want to get out of the Championship and flourish, that's how you should get out of the division. Two, what even was my original point there? Two, the point has gone from my mind completely. I'm sure will come back. Janulis, red card. Yeah, it is. What does he sort of? He goes like that, doesn't he, with his arm? It's a red card, clear as day. VAR gives that as a red all day, every day. Steve agrees and says most overrated player in the squad. Yeah, might be a bit harsh on in terms of how he's rated, but I would absolutely let him go on a free at the end of this season, because he's just nowhere near what he used to be, which is much like Norwich City in general. He really does probably embody that in terms of the player who came in and played, was very brave and technically quite decent, drove the ball forward very well. Whereas these days, when he gets into those advanced positions, the final product in terms of crossing is just so poor. And I don't know, this season there seems to be something about him really going for the officials, which I don't know, if we're like a big team in the Championship and we have that time to waste essentially, maybe do it. But if you're Norwich City playing how they are, and Janulis, in terms of his performance levels, should really be focusing on just playing football rather than diving, not winning the foul, and picking up a card of whatever colour. But Norwich, and Janulis, yeah, particularly overrated. I do have to agree with that. Yeah, Hull must really hate us, and I don't know. My position is it's just funny at this point. If it was against us, I don't know. I'd be seething. I'd be absolutely furious. And the fact that I keep saying I don't know, I feel like I've said that quite a few times across this video. Probably does suggest that this sort of state of limbo that Norwich find themselves in, I'm finding particularly tough to process. But in terms of that performance, let's get back to it. It's just, I almost said it again then. In terms of Sargent's performance, let's talk about him because it's his first time playing for some time. He again is a product of that system where he didn't really have the chance to get involved. He had that one shot. I know he's a player coming back from injury, but yeah, it is almost sort of, quite a shame, really, isn't it, that he couldn't sort of get involved in the game as much as possible. I really do think that solidifies, by the way, that performance, Kenny McLean as one of the better centre backs. I was quite interested to see what happened when McLean was put into that sort of pivot role with Ben Gibson behind him, and Ben Gibson, whatever you make of him, left foot centre back in left centre back is like the reason he's there. And Nunez's performance wasn't particularly great, which is why he was hooked at halftime. And I think it worked all right. I was kind of hoping it would make us look a lot better because with McLean there, you probably have that more physical presence, which you want next to Gabby Sara. Gabby Sara, before the game, really not doing a great job of like showing or hiding his not so, I don't know how to describe it. He just, yeah, it was weird vibes, but it's something we've been saying for most of the season that, and again, it applies to a lot of the Norwich team, and Gabby Sara is just another example of how this system, whatever it is, and this coach isn't getting the best out of his players, and he clearly didn't seem too pleased to be playing where he's been playing. And today, I don't know, it wasn't particularly effective and didn't really have a chance to do much. And I think when you put him and Nunez next to each other as a midfield duo, away from home and a team that's setting up to defend. It's bizarre how it almost worked, but you did see quite a lot in the first sort of 25 minutes how that was just bypassed just willy-nilly. Like, if any team plays against Norwich City at the moment and they have slight quality in the middle, that's game done and dusted, because defensively, after that midfield has been like just strolled past, we really don't hold a good shape. We've got Sam McCallum, for example, who came on and I think he got caught out a couple of times, and I saw it a lot against Ipswich, and I did wonder whether it was systematic or whether it was Sam McCallum's quality in itself, not being able to pick up the right position. But every element of Norwich's game really needs a lot of work and much better structure. Andrew says, we need a ball winning defensive mid. They lose the ball so easily in the middle of the park so many times. Yeah, I agree with that. I do, in the sense of, if I could have Oliver Skipp back, I would. But I don't think you need like an Alex Tetty. I don't think you typically or necessarily need someone who's going to come in and win some hard tackles, which is perhaps what a ball-winning midfielder typically is. I think you just need a bit more of a sensible formation or a bit more of a sensible structure. But again, that comes at the cost of having three strikers. You've got three strikers, right, who are good enough to start. You've got Ida, Sargent, and Barnes, who are good enough to start. But if you do what maybe I think Daniel Farker tried to do in that Premier League season, where you sort of take one more attacking player out and you put another midfielder in to try and, I guess the word is bolster it up, it doesn't go very well. And I don't know. I don't know whether I'd want David Wagner to do that or not. I think shape-wise, they just need to be a little bit more, or a little bit smarter in where they try and force the opposition. Again, it seems to be typically, I don't know, I don't even think they do force them out wide, but you tend to notice that once the midfield has been overtaken, the ball seems to go out wide, and that's where trouble comes. But yeah, it's a weird feeling after a Norwich City win. It is a very, very strange feeling. However, Norwich City have won. I'm going to be very unprofessional and just have a quick peek at the championship table. Should have done this beforehand. It's just insane to me that, and this is the game that kicks off the football weekend, of course. So most teams around Norwich and Hull will have had or have a game in hand to play. But the fact that Norwich are now on 38 points, 1 point behind Hull, who by all means are having a fairly decent season, and they are 2 points currently off Sunderland, who are in sixth. They have a game in hand, of course, but still 4 points potentially 5 as well. It's just Norwich shouldn't be anywhere near the playoffs, yet they seem to float in and around. And for me, and again, it really links back to this idea of there is that quality. For me, it's just, there is so much more to get out of this squad. And the fact that Norwich City keep scoring goals, but not just goals, fairly decent goals, it's crazy to me that no action has been taken. And it leads to a larger point, which we'll pick up in a podcast, in that I think we're rapidly approaching that time where someone with authority needs to address what's happening, because we've seen it all really this season, haven't we? We've seen that lightning fast start. We've seen it rapidly fall apart. We've seen that what seems to be being perceived internally as that picking up of up off the floor, sorry, and now we're kind of floating around in that rut, yet we've won tonight. So we've kind of seen it all. I want to know what the vibe is in terms of the expectation, because you can't look at this Norwich City team and think, yeah, that stands a chance in the playoffs, or if that by some miracle goes up, is at all sustainable. And I don't think we need to be sort of bouncing between divisions again. It just seems like a bizarre time to me to I don't know, to be sticking with the manager. And after saying that after a 2-1 win is utterly bizarre, but it's where we are as a football club. It's where we are as supporters, and it seems to be the most united we've ever been in terms of, do we want a manager to stay or go? But there you go. Norwich City, very, very strange at the moment. I appreciate, those who are watching live. Thank you very much. If you have watched in post, whatever, let me know what you think of Norwich City at the moment, and whether you get excited for games. I don't really, but it's, it's part of the culture now, isn't it? It's in your blood. When it gets there, it doesn't go anywhere. And we'll stick with them through thick and thin. We'll see what happens, and we'll pray for better times. But we'll be back here next week talking about the same points, etc., etc. Thank you all very much for watching. Leave a thumbs up if you fancy it. Subscribe too if you're feeling kind, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.